There exists a phrase, just two words, that when spoken not to the crowd, but into the cathedral of your inner silence, begins to reorganize the architecture of reality itself. Doors you didn't knock on swing open. Synchronicities multiply. Obstacles that seem permanent simply dissolve. But here's what makes this dangerous. These words are not for sharing. Not with your closest friend. Not with your family. Not even whispered to your reflection. Because the moment you release them into the atmosphere of doubt, into the court of logical minds who live only by what they can measure, you dilute their potency. You invite skepticism. And skepticism is the acid that corrodes creation before it ever takes form. Listen closely. Manifestation is not born from effort. It is born from identity, from the internal shift that happens when you stop chasing what you want and start becoming the person who already possesses it. These two words, they are the threshold, the portal, the activation code. You didn't come here for information. You came here for transformation. And by the end of this message, you won't just know the words, you'll understand the mechanics of why they work, how to wield them with precision, and what to do when your entire reality begins to reconstruct itself around your declaration. Stay with me. You've been trained to use language as a reporting tool, to describe, to inform, to label what already exists. But I'm here to awaken you to something the ancients understood, and the modern mind has abandoned. Words are not neutral. They are not passive. They are generative forces. You are not simply speaking words. Words are speaking you into existence. Every sentence you utter, every internal phrase you accept as casual commentary, every loop of thought you allow to repeat, these are not harmless vibrations. These are architectural commands sent directly into the formless substance of creation. You may not witness the effects immediately. But make no mistake, every word spoken with conviction returns to you not as an echo, but as experience, as circumstance, as opportunity or obstacle, as resistance or release. This is why what you ask for matters less than what you declare. What you hope for is secondary to what you inwardly accept as already true. Now pay attention, because this is where the shift begins. When I say declare, I'm not talking about shouting affirmations into a mirror or performing rituals for an audience. I'm talking about a quiet, unshakable knowing, a still inner voice that doesn't beg for reality to change. It simply recognizes that it already has. The tragedy is this. Most people speak their circumstances instead of their creation. They say, I'm broke. I'm exhausted. Nothing works for me. No one sees me. They think they're describing their life, but they're prescribing it. These aren't observations. These are orders issued to the unseen intelligence that responds only to one frequency, belief wrapped in language. Let that penetrate. You are always wielding this creative force. The only question is whether you're wielding it consciously or letting it wield you unconsciously. The language of creation isn't about eloquence or vocabulary. It's about identity. The instant you say, I am, you invoke the most potent phrase in existence. You are defining the invisible substance of your being. I am is not followed by facts, it's followed by fate. Say it with fear, and fear follows. Say it with certainty, and the world reconfigures to match. Say it with love, and love floods in. And yet most of us say, I am, and follow it with lack, with limitation, with disbelief. Not because we desire to, but because we were conditioned to. We were taught that boldness is arrogance, that humility means diminishing ourselves. But what we call arrogance, creation calls clarity. The universe doesn't care about the volume of your voice. It only listens to the depth of your certainty. Let me give you an example. A man stands before a mirror and says, I am successful, but his heart whispers, I am not. Which one shapes his life? The whisper, every time. Because it's not the loudness of your voice that creates, it's the intensity of your internal consent. This is why affirmation alone is not enough. You must assume. You must speak the word and inhabit it like a second skin. You must think from the end, not toward it. Speak not as someone who desires, but as one who has already received. This is where most collapse. They say, I am wealthy, and then check their bank account for proof. They say, I am loved, and wait for a message to validate it. But creation doesn't follow proof. It produces proof. Your words don't respond to the world. The world responds to your words. So now I ask you, what are you saying when no one is listening? What are you whispering to yourself in the dark? That is the prayer being answered. That is the frequency you're broadcasting. Your outer world is just a printout of your inner speech. The events you call life are echoes of yesterday's beliefs. And now you know. Now you're awake. You will no longer say, this is just the way things are. You will say, this is the way I have imagined them to be. And you'll begin to listen, really listen to the words you casually speak. You'll catch yourself mid-complaint and turn it into a command. You'll rise from victim to visionary simply by shifting the way you speak. Say, I am capable, and watch capability meet you. Say, I am chosen, and circumstances will bend to reveal your favor. Say, I am whole, and healing begins not because you forced it, but because you finally stopped speaking against it. This is the code, hidden in plain sight. The sacred texts of every tradition speak it in symbols. The mystics live by it in silence. The prophets proclaimed it with fire. And yet here you are, hearing it anew, not with your ears, but with your soul. Because something within you already knows this. You felt it in the quiet moments, in the déjà vu, in the flashes of clarity that vanish before you can name them. You've always known your words held weight. You just forgot they were bricks in the house you're living in. So stop waiting for the world to tell you what's possible. Start telling the world what is. I am is your permission slip. I am is your access point. It is the beginning of every miracle and the root of every breakthrough. Let the world argue. Let logic protest. Let doubt rise. You hold to the word. Speak it in secret. Guard it with reverence. Repeat it until your bones believe. And when your body still feels tired, say, I am renewed. When your bank account looks dry, say, I am overflowing. When no one claps for you, say, I am celebrated. Because eventually the outer must mirror the inner. It has no choice. Creation isn't optional. It's law. And your words, they are the lawmaker. Speak them wisely. Speak them deliberately. Speak them in love. Because you are not here to describe life. You are here to declare it. And yet, as you begin to declare, as you dare to claim the I am, you will feel something strange, an urge to share it, to explain it, to speak it into the ears of others so they might witness your transformation and believe in it with you. But I must tell you, with all the urgency of truth, do not. What is sacred must remain hidden, not because it is fragile, but because it is formless. And form takes shape best in silence. When you plant a seed into the earth, you don't pull it up each day to check if it's growing. You trust the mystery of the dark soil. You let the unseen do its perfect work. Likewise, when you speak your creative word, when you say, I am, and attach it to the reality you choose to inhabit, you must seal it inside yourself like a sacred vow. Speak it inwardly, consistently, with unwavering faith, but share it with no one. Not because others are evil or unworthy, but because they live in the logic of the seen, and you are speaking from the authority of the unseen. When you tell someone your declaration, especially one that hasn't yet taken visible form, they begin to reflect it through the lens of their own doubts, limitations, and fears. They look at your current results, not your inner shift. And without meaning to, they try to correct you back into their version of reality. Their words won't sound cruel. They may even sound caring. But make no mistake, every seed of doubt they plant becomes a delay in your manifestation. You do not need external approval for an internal truth. That is the trap. That is the noise. That is the delay. Because the moment you utter your desire into the ears of one who does not live by faith, you invite analysis. And analysis is the enemy of assumption. It begins to pull your declared word out of the womb of the subconscious, placing it back in the courtroom of reason. And what lives in reason must obey logic. But what lives in the unseen, what lives in spirit, is not subject to logic. It is subject to belief. Protect the early form of your vision as a mother protects a child in her womb. It doesn't need to be explained. It needs to be nourished in thought, in feeling, in stillness. It needs to be kept away from the friction of disbelief, the erosion of criticism, and the chill of intellectual doubt. You may say, but I want support. I want someone to believe with me. And I tell you now, your own belief is more than enough. It is not a group vote. Creation is not democracy. It is decree. In the early stages of manifestation, silence is not weakness. It is wisdom. When you are gestating a new reality, speak less, not just to others, but even to yourself. Let your declaration be brief but bold. I am. Let the feeling carry more weight than the words. Let the assumption become so normal, so familiar, that you no longer feel the need to announce it. Because true power never explains itself. It simply is. When you walk in the knowing of a fulfilled desire, your need to prove it vanishes. You do not need to convince anyone of what you already are. The rose does not ask permission to bloom. It simply opens in season. Likewise, your word kept sacred will blossom in its appointed hour without your needing to justify it. And here's what's miraculous. When you stop announcing your dreams, they begin arriving faster. Not because the dream changed, but because your energy stopped leaking into the world of opinion. You are no longer dividing your creative power between imagining and explaining. You are letting it gather, condense, focus. And when that happens, when your word becomes your atmosphere, reality bends quietly, certainly, powerfully. So don't feel pressured to reveal your inner work to outer eyes. Don't advertise what's being woven in secret. Let your transformation speak through results, not announcements. Let the shift happen so deeply that when the world finally sees it, they say, "When did this happen?" And all you will do is smile, because you will know it happened the moment you said in silence, "I am," and told no one. If you've made a silent declaration about who you are, one so sacred and potent that it must remain unspoken to the world, it brings us to a brutal but essential truth. Who you believe you are will determine everything. That's not just poetic. It's not esoteric abstraction. It's practical. It's psychological. It's foundational. Let me put it plainly. You don't get what you want, you get what you are. If you say "I am" and follow that phrase with something weak, something bitter, something that reflects your current struggle instead of your intended strength, then you're not speaking the future into existence. You're reinforcing the present prison, and you're doing it with conviction, with energy, with identity. Human beings are wired in a very particular way. You act in accordance with what you identify as. That's why these two words, "I am," are so deeply embedded in your psyche. They're not casual, they're declarations of being. And when you repeat them, they begin to shape the lens through which you perceive the world, and more importantly, through which the world responds to you. This is why people sabotage their own growth, because they're trying to achieve something without becoming the type of person who naturally achieves it. It's not enough to hope for wealth while still identifying as someone who's always scraping by. It's not enough to desire love while clinging to the belief that you're unlovable. That contradiction creates a split inside of you, a psychological war, and it paralyzes you. Do you know how many people live stuck in that contradiction? Thousands, millions, maybe more. They say they want to change, but every word they speak confirms the identity of the person they were yesterday. And the body listens. The brain listens. The world listens. You can't lie to yourself and expect real change. The unconscious mind, the core of who you are, doesn't respond to lies. It responds to belief that has been rehearsed into reality. So if you want to manifest anything at all, you must first become the version of yourself who already has it. You must speak from that place, think from that place, behave as though it were already true, not in a delusional way, but in a strategic, courageous, focused way. This is where the hard work comes in. Not the outer hustle, but the inner shift, the daily recalibration of your identity. You need to ask yourself, who am I being today? Do my thoughts match the future I claim I want? Are my habits aligned with the kind of person I say I am? It's tough. It's sobering. Because most people want the result without the reconstruction. They want the fruit without growing the root. But reality doesn't work like that. Your identity is like a thermostat. You might spike in behavior, try something new, set a goal, declare a dream. But if your internal identity hasn't changed, you'll snap back to where that thermostat is set. It's inevitable. That's why people who win the lottery usually lose it all. That's why people who suddenly fall in love often sabotage it, because the identity didn't match the blessing. And so the blessing gets rejected, whether consciously or not. So what do? You change the setting. You raise the standard. You stop saying, "I'll become that someday," and start saying, "That's who I am now." And the moment you say it not performatively, but sincerely, deeply, it starts to become true. You act differently. You speak differently. You see differently. Let me be brutally clear about something. This shift in identity is not comfortable. It will feel like lying at first. It will feel unnatural. But that's because you've spent so many years rehearsing a limited version of yourself, Of course, truth feels foreign if you've been loyal to falsehood for a lifetime. But that's no excuse to stay small. You're not meant to simply survive your story. You're meant to rewrite it. And that starts with the two words that define your character arc. Before the world ever sees the ending. I am. Not I wish, not I might, not I hope. But I am. This is where personal responsibility begins, and personal power is born. What you're about to discover could rewrite your entire reality. And the strange thing is, once you start to speak those words, I am, from a place of deep conviction, once you begin to embody a new identity instead of begging for a new outcome, something else happens. Something subtle, almost invisible, but incredibly profound. The world begins to shape itself around your assumption, and your imagination becomes the soil from which your future grows. That's not metaphor, that's reality. You might think imagination is reserved for children or artists or storytellers, but that's dangerously naive. Every single person is imagining something all the time, and more often than not, it's unconscious. They're imagining rejection before it happens, failure before they even begin, conflict before the words are spoken. And because of that, their life becomes an exact mirror of the worst-case scenarios they've rehearsed 1,000 times in their own minds. The imagination is not optional. It's not a toy. It's the womb of your experience. If you imagine consistently from the place of the person you used to be, you will remain that person regardless of what affirmations you recite, what goals you set, or what external efforts you take. So this becomes the critical task. You must take control of what you imagine. This is where discipline meets vision. Imagination, when used intentionally, becomes your greatest tool. Not for escape, but for embodiment, for becoming. So let's look at this carefully. If you want to shift your identity, if you want your words, those powerful declarations of I am, to stick, to take root in the subconscious and bear fruit in your life, you need to do more than say them. You need to see them. You need to feel them. And not as distant possibilities, but as present realities. Your imagination must begin to operate from the place you want to be, not toward it. That's the difference. Most people imagine forward. They look at their current circumstances. They look at the mountain ahead, and then they say, someday I'll get there. But that mindset traps them in the very reality they're trying to escape. Because as long as something is imagined in the future, it is not believed in the present. And what isn't believed now has no power to manifest. So what's the alternative? You imagine backwards. You place yourself mentally in the future, in the state already fulfilled. And then you look back from there with the confidence of someone who's already arrived. You say, of course this happened. I've lived it 1,000 times in my mind. And then something inside of you shifts. The fear begins to evaporate. The doubts lose their voice because you've made the future familiar. And what's familiar is no longer frightening. Now, this isn't fantasy. This isn't illusion. This is responsible creation. You have to remember that the subconscious mind doesn't distinguish between what's real and what's vividly imagined. If you feed it an image long enough, especially one that's emotionally charged, and repeat it, it begins to organize your behavior, consciously and unconsciously, to make that image come true. And here's the key. This only works when you're consistent, when you're disciplined. You can't imagine success once and expect transformation. You have to return to it, daily, vividly, emotionally. You have to feel the relief of it, the peace of it, the normalcy of it. Because when your imagination becomes your dwelling place, when you live mentally in the reality you desire, your subconscious begins to accept it as fact. And when your subconscious accepts it as fact, your behavior aligns. Your perception shifts. Your opportunities multiply. Not by magic, but by alignment. You start noticing what you previously overlooked. You start acting in ways that match the person you've been imagining yourself to be. And the world, which is always responding to your internal state, begins to reflect that shift back to you. This is the loop. This is the cycle. Identity, imagination, action, reality. It all begins with I am. It all grows in the soil of disciplined imagination. And it all manifests when you stop waiting for permission and start living as though it's already done. Now, if you're finding this transformative and you want to go deeper, especially into the psychological mechanisms behind identity, the unconscious forces shaping your reality, and how to work with the shadow aspects of yourself that sabotage your declarations, I've written something specifically for you. It's called Beyond the Shadow. A Journey into Carl Jung's Core Psychology. This ebook breaks down Jung's most powerful concepts, the shadow, the persona, the anima and animus, individuation, and shows you how to apply them practically to your own life. Because understanding I am is one thing. Understanding why you resist becoming who you're capable of being, that's another level entirely. You'll find the link pinned in the comments below. It's a short read, but it's dense with insight. And if you're ready to take this even further, if you want a 30-day practical guide to applying Jungian principles daily, check out Dialogues with the Unconscious. It's designed to walk you through inner work, step by step, so you're not just thinking about transformation, you're living it. Both are linked below. Grab them if you're serious about this path. So let's bring this full circle. You now understand the power of I am. You understand why silence is sacred. You understand that identity precedes manifestation. And you understand that imagination is the creative force that bridges the gap between who you are and who you're becoming. But none of this works without discipline. And I don't mean the discipline of waking up at 5 a.m. or grinding through tasks, though those have their place. I mean the discipline of mental fidelity, the discipline to stay loyal to your inner declaration even when the outer world contradicts it, the discipline to return to your imagined state even when fear whispers, this isn't real, the discipline to guard your words, both spoken and unspoken, like a sentry guards a gate. Because here's the truth, the world will test you, not maliciously, not intentionally, but it will test you. Your circumstances will seem to mock your declaration. People will unknowingly reinforce the old story. Your own mind will present evidence of why it can't work. And in those moments, you have a choice. You can fold. You can say, I knew it wasn't real. You can let the outer world dictate your inner truth. Or you can hold the line. You can say, I don't care what it looks like. I know who I am. I know what I've claimed. And I'm not moving. That is the discipline that changes everything. It's not loud. It's not flashy. It's quiet, stubborn, unwavering faith. And it's the difference between people who talk about manifestation and people who live it. So here's what I want you to do. First, decide who you are, not who you hope to be, who you are, right now, in this moment. Say it, I am. And finish that sentence with the truth you're claiming, not the truth you're experiencing. Second, commit to silence. Don't announce it. Don't defend it. Don't explain it. Let it gestate in the dark. Let it grow in the unseen. Third, feed your imagination. Daily, vividly, emotionally. See yourself living from the end. Feel the reality of it. Make it so familiar that doubt has no room to grow. Fourth, guard your inner speech. Listen to what you say to yourself when no one's watching. Catch the complaints, catch the fears, catch the doubts, and replace them gently, firmly with the truth you've declared. And fifth, trust the process. Trust that the unseen is responding. Trust that your word is being honored. Trust that reality is bending even if you can't see it yet. Because it is. And one day, sooner than you think, you'll look around and realize the world you imagined has become the world you inhabit. Not because you forced it, but because you became it. So here we are. You now know the two words. You know their power. You know why they must remain sacred. And you know what to do. The question is, will you do it? Will you speak I am with the full weight of your being behind it? Will you guard it in silence? Will you discipline your imagination? Will you become the person you're declaring yourself to be? Or will you let this be another video you watched, another concept you admired, another truth you agreed with but never embodied? The choice is yours. But know this, the moment you commit, the moment you step into the identity, you're claiming the universe has no choice but to respond. Not because it's mystical, but because it's law. You are the creator of your experience. Your words are the blueprints, your imagination is the architect, and your identity is the foundation. Build wisely, build boldly, build in silence, and watch as the life you've been whispering to yourself in secret becomes the life you're living out loud. I'll see you in the next one. Now go, speak your truth, and become it.